All right, Superhumans, we have a little bit of a podcast change here. Yes, we release episodes every Saturday and every Tuesday. The Saturday episodes are the shorter episodes. The Tuesday episodes are my interviews with experts, scientists, technologists on many domains of performance. But going forward, one of the things that we are going to feature is a interview with a CEO, executive entrepreneur, every month. And we are going to speak to them about how some of these concepts that we introduce in the podcast play a role in their life and their ability to make their team, as well as themselves, perform better. And so our first guest in these types of episodes is Marc Hinnenberg. And Marc is the CEO at Hanken and SSE. Marc has spent the last decade working in strategy development and really making it happen. He has a passion for creating commercial success, business impact, and profitability through really customer understanding, customer experience, and purpose. Before Hanken and SSE, Marc worked for over a decade in the finance industry, as well as management consulting. As a CEO, program director, advisor, and initiator at Hanken and SSE, Marc specializes in strategy work and implementation, change management, and organizational development. So let's talk a little bit about what Marc and I got into. We talked about the evolving landscape of leadership and really what the requirements are from both the personality as well as characteristics that are needed to be a successful executive during this increasingly innovative era. We get into Leadership 2.0, and I asked Marc to really define that. And we really delve deep into one of my favorite topics, the future of work. The show notes for this one are at decodingsuperhuman.com/Hanken. That's Hanken. And enjoy my episode with Marc Hinnenberg. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Boomer. Delighted to be here.
This is going to be an absolutely amazing conversation because I always like having a little bit of a background as to your path to CEO, because you've worked in a number of different industries.
Yeah.
Do you mind just touching a little bit, well, first on those industries and sort of, since they were so high pressured, what kind of characteristics allowed you to thrive in those industries?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and it's seldomly that you stop and think about your path, where you come from, what you do, and I encourage people to do that more, because of this kind of insight will help you to take your next steps. And there's a lot of the question is, what's your vision and what do you want to become? But I've had an understanding that I'm good with people, and one of the things is that I get my energy from people. And the collaboration modes that you have, and you can engage people to gain a different target. That's, I think, one of the gifts or the blessings I have been doing, and I've been able to master that skill as well, because I realized that it's not a number one or a race for just one. The other thing I would like to say is you need to be able to handle stress in a way, and focusing on the task in hand. And then I realized throughout the years that although it's a high pressure situation, I've never failed to deliver, which means that putting your focus in that a lot of stuff can be done in 24 hours or 48 hours or even 2 hours. That will be good results. And then I've always had this kind of never give up and never come empty-handed. So always have an idea to push forward, and that's, I think, the way you're doing your path, and you're doing the unbeaten path and showing the way.
Mm-hmm. So along that, because you touched on a few things there that are very interesting, right? Like stress resilience, dealing with people, etc.
Yeah.
Has health, or an emphasis on health, or what has actually helped you in sort of developing those skills? Because obviously experience does help, but
Yeah.
any sort of other things like it has an emphasis on health or a lack thereof helped you as well?
Yeah. So it was interesting when I came from this kind of consulting world, which you ran out. I was working at the bank,
Hmm.
a financial institution, and it was good times at the moment. So you had this kind of goodies always in every meeting, and you started to gain weight, and
Hmm.
then started to realize that you got tired and
Hmm.
irritated in a way. So I think I gained 10 pounds really quickly, about in half a year or something, by just eating and having all this kind of munchy stuff
Hmm.
around you. And then I realized that wasn't the way going forward. And I got early on in the marketing career, I got an opportunity to sponsor a half marathon. And
Hmm.
I hadn't really done sports in 15 years. And I started out with just running a mile, and I was exhausted. And then after a while, I just made it. And then we made this kind of bet. Okay, let's do a marathon. And since then, I ran 10 marathons. So that's given me own time and time to also think about solving issues that's work related. So it's been, the endorphins are, you feel good and you're energized, but
Yeah.
as well you are the resilience as you said, you have time to think, and
Hmm.
it's your own time. So that's been for me a very, very important thing during my years, the last 5-6 years at least.
Absolutely. And I remember my first years in investment banking pretty well. There's a lot of snacks around,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're just kind of eating some points to stay awake.
yeah.
But I remember those years very well, not so fondly because it took a while to lose those pounds, but
Yeah, yeah.
excellent. So in terms of your people skill development, I'm just curious, were there any books or things that you've read that have served you very well along that development?
Yeah, there are. Well, I've read a lot of books, and I think that's one of the recommendation that what I said, that if you want to be on the edge, you should be modern, and that means like you should really know what happens in society, and to be able to develop your skills, and especially now the foresight skills and understanding what happens in the world in this kind of bio or tree divided world with you, Russia, China, and United States on one hand, and then we have this kind of Europe like a meddler in the middle of what's going to happen. So these kinds of books, career wise, I think that I had this book that helped me very much in communication and presentation and making difficult things really, really easy to understand. And that was a book called Presentation 10 by Gary Reynolds. And that's an interesting book. Well, it tells you how to make nice looking PowerPoint slides and how to make nice presentation, but it also tells you, and he's living in Japan, so he has this kind of Japanese concept, and there's about how to eat right, and eat only till you're 80% full, and this kind of using this kind of insights and concept in making your story and building this kind of presentation. So that's a way I love really much. Chip and Dan Heath, two Harvard guys, written a book called Made to Stick, and then how to change when change is hard and
Mm-hmm.
hard. And I've been working a lot of these kind of motivational issues in my work today, and these kind of academic projects of how to change and how to nudge people to do stuff. And it's not easy, because there's always a conceptual extrinsic uh, value that is there, and then this kind of intrinsic, where we're talking today about this purpose and why are you doing this work. and
Mm-hmm.
and as we know that you kind of, this kind of sticks and carrots aren't really the way to motivate people. Research show that well, if you change, you go to another workplace, you'll get the same perks. So it's not that why you stay at the work, but it's more of this kind of purpose, and that you feel good about what you're doing, and that's something where corporations should focus on. And I think this kind of purposeful meaning and discussing, and what is really the value that you give to in your working and what you do. So that's I think an important stuff that should be emphasized. Yeah.
Beautiful. Just for the uninitiated, because greater than 50% of the audience listening right now is in the United States. Do you mind explaining?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you mind explaining Hanken to everybody?
Yeah. So I am CEO for a magnificent company called Hanken and SSE, Executive Education, and it's an independent consultancy owned by the Stockholm School of Economics and the Hanken School of Economics, and people who studied it. They're very international business schools, and they're what we call triple crown accredited schools, which means that only 1% of all the business schools in the world, there's 15,000, are triple crown accredited, which is very, very high standard. And we have a lot of worldwide known professors as well. So, and some may know that the Finnish education system is one of the best in the world. And we are highly educated. So it's an interesting place to be globally right now. So what we do is really we support amazing companies to do strategic change. And my take of this kind of, if you want to change, you really know you have to define why, and then take it from that to the different levels of the organization to come there. But that's Hanken at SSE for in a nutshell.
So one of the things you said earlier was be on the edge and be modern, or to be modern, be on the edge. And I just want to go a little bit into that modern concept, because right now a big buzzword is disruption, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that everyone who's listening to this is probably experiencing it in some sort of way.
Yeah.
What kind of characteristics do you think leaders need, or do you know leaders need in this kind of era where their job could theoretically be gone tomorrow?
Yeah.
What characteristics do you think are most valuable for leaders?
Well, if we talk about change, change is very, very hard, and nobody really likes change. You might say you like change, and if you don't, get married, then you know that it's hard to change.
I'm in this process right now, by the way. So
congratulations. But I mean that you'll sure know your defaults quite soon, and if after 10 happy or 15 happy years, I still know that they're the same discussions we talk about, and it's not easy really to change who you are. But the concept, I think, of disruption is one question, and the question is, what if? So what if we could do it in a different way? And in big corporations aren't built in asking the question, what if? They're built like a machine to do output. So it's like explosion of the idea that you have, or the product, get more performance, get it highly, get it more cheap out, and run faster, get it out. So nobody has really time to ask what if. But when you're in a startup, you're 95% of the time you ask what if. Yeah. So I think the big corporation, if you're working in a big corporation, you kind of lost this kind of youth and ask what if, and this kind of childlike play in finding new solutions. And especially in this kind of world where really now when we talk about fake news and stuff, what's really real, and it's nice to work in academia because that's really research stuff. But what does academia do? They put hypotheses on stuff. What if? And then they test and test and test. So I think this kind of curiosity is one of the like basic skills in leadership that curious companies will thrive in the future. I think that's one thing that is really important on a personal level. Then I don't believe in kind of this kind of functional corporate structures that they will stay for really long. And I think as well as we talk now, we are doing a collaboration actually now in some kind of ecosystem that we're building up, and there are other players as well. So this kind of platform economy where you play a part and you get specialized in what you do, but you also know something about all the other elements, and you know people that can deliver it for you. So I think this kind of special skill, but a broad knowledge of what you can do, and that work as if you're as a person as well as a platform, so you can deliver results by combining the different competencies that you know around you, then I think you can make an impact. Traditionally, the tasks have been easy in corporations, and you gather your team, and that's the expert team, and they do something. But now, really, I think you employ people that are not in your organization, and that's when the magic happens. So this kind of entrepreneurship, seeing the big picture, being in the moment, and then leading people. So, I mean, you need people to do stuff, and then you need people to believe in what you do. They call investors in some way. And then creating this kind of, we can change the world, or we are world's best culture. Because if you don't have that, you probably won't make it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think. And then there's this kind of third dimension we shouldn't forget is also the understanding of potential customers, or the gaps in the market, or the way that your solution or service will help them to be better or achieve their results. And this kind of needs-based understanding what you do, especially if you already have a product or a service that you're trying to be in the market. So those kind of this kind of modern foresight, understanding where you are, reading The Economist, that gives you a good picture of the world, what's happening, and then you're in a tech blog, and then you're in a company, and stuff like this, and this kind of entrepreneurship, like we do. I mean, let's do something great together, and see what's happened, and probably someone, hello America, or someone else. So, well, that's a good thing. Let's build on that, and let's have these guys, and let's talk. Can we do something together? So I think that this is the way that we're going to do business.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you said there was traditional structures may disappear. I'm paraphrasing here, but traditional structures may disappear. Yeah. Does this mean we're moving towards a world where so on one hand, I look at the world and I say, like, there are quite a number of large tech companies which could be the sort of four horsemen, or whatever you want to call it, of the new economy. Yeah. On the other hand, what you just said also resonates with me very well, which is this idea of mutual collaboration among essentially peers. Yeah. Is it mutually exclusive? Said another way, like, are Amazon and Google going to run the world, or are we going to have a more integrated approach with both of those?
Well, that's a difficult question, because no one can say what the future.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm asking the question as an yeah.
So I think that we can look what's happening if we look, behind, and what's happened to big corporations that have been the leading in the world as the world has gone, developed and gone further. Many of them have failed. But again, these kind of tech companies are really investing and doing new stuff all the time. So I think that they will have a successful future. And as you see, Amazon is not a bookstore or book selling company anymore, and Google is not a search engine anymore. Pretty far from it. So they are actually one of the first kind of mega dinosaurs that have been, surviving the first meteor attack and doing the second. But probably someday that will also disrupt, and they break down to smaller companies and stuff like this, because also we imagine, I mean, there's religions, there are people, by 2 billion people in the Catholic Church, they think about, and I probably kind of Google and Amazon are these kind of religions where you can do, and this kind of a culture that you can build on. So that's my take. There are a lot of movements, I think, in the world away from this kind of big stuff and the state where we are in with the environment and social responsibilities and travel and stuff like this. And I think the biggest money in the world in the future is quite the information stuff. And as more is digitalized, the more can be copied. So coming up with kind of new stuff, and we're coming to have AI doing a lot of the data stuff in the world. So this is the question is, what is the human performance always in this kind of, and what kind of new companies will there be? So I don't know, one of the books that we I think many of have been reading this kind of Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari, and he paints a scary picture, I think, of the future, also about the future of humankind.
Yeah. Does the computer run you, or do you run the computer, right?
Yeah. Or really even the extreme that, well, there's no work to be done. And so if you don't do any work, so what do you do for being happy? Well, just sit around and eat a lot of pills and be happy. And then that's quite an interesting view on what's going to happen. So I don't know if Google or Amazon or this kind of big, if this kind of corporate structure is relevant. I think more about this kind of purposeful movements, and we have been seeing this a lot through the world now, this kind of helping each other and sharing economy and stuff like this. And also they do a lot of good, and they donate money and stuff like this. But I think this kind of mutual way of uniting humankind in a kind of better way. And then it starts from yourself. And if you feel good, then this kind of you can do good for your community. So that will be of value.
All right. So I want to just pick your brain, since you have access to a lot of research from some pretty great universities.
Yeah.
The common characteristics among great leaders, personality characteristics, if you will, and great companies, really. Is there any sort of common ground, or is it? I've read recently, there's many. This was and the effective executive, Peter Drucker. There's many different types of leaders, right?
Yeah.
Is there any common ground or anything that people should be on the lookout for / training?
Well, all of these models that you have, you have this kind of going back to the Greeks, and the blood and the sanguine and melancholic, and going to Maslow, and what you really talk about is that you help people becoming better at what they are, and giving them the freedom or the autonomy to do the stuff that they want to do, and help them to become better. So I think it all boils into that. And then there's difficulties or challenges on the way. And one of the challenges, the corporate structure or something, the given task that you are going to do, and so on. And then people move on. So if you're a leader, you should always think about, well, what can you give to this person in the backpack, because that person will not stay forever, maybe 2 or 3 years, and so on. We're talking a lot of this kind of change leadership, and everything is change leadership. And John Kotter is one of the I think the most, and he had this kind of March of the Penguins as well many years back. And the interesting thing about this, if it's always been criticized like it's like top down. So but really, if you think about this, the change comes from the organization. Someone says that something has to be done, or comes from outside. It could be customers, or it could be anything else. So what I mention, and I think this is this kind of people skills is depending on the situation. Every situation demands different kind of leadership. If it's easy, repeatable tasks, then you shouldn't go and micromanage. And if it's something else, I think this kind of people skills, but that you are there for them. That's one of the things, that you give them time and listen to them very, very carefully, and trying to help them. And it's difficult to listen without coming out and saying what's on your mind, but really helping people to give the answers. So I think that one of without going into kind of this kind of academic research on this, but because we are doing exercises, we have 8 different models, and you can test them all, and
Wow.
then you see what kind of leaders are. And there are different people. I mean, if you look at this kind of basic disc analysis, that I'm really a pace setter, I'm just kind of red, and I want to make things happen. And then there are people that are like introverts and blue, and they're very on this kind of detail and information. It might be that I have a hard time with you as a person. The chemistry doesn't click, and then the discussion is how can you support, and how can you adapt to the situation to get those people on board. And then we have had the discussions as well in this kind of Bezos, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. Are they these kind of leaders really that people want to lead? And many say no, but what has been so fantastic about them is that they have been an inspiration to take the next step and do something that hasn't been done before, and people are driven by that.
Our sponsor for today's show is one of the 2 brands of blue light blockers that I actually recommend using. And I've had the CEO, Matt Maruka, on the show before, and we got into a 2-hour-long discussion, which I think to this day is the longest episode of the Decoding Superhuman podcast. But his company, Raw Optics, has made blue light blockers sexy. In fact, I know they worked because I've seen the test results. And the beauty of their product is that blue light doesn't get in. And if any amount of blue light gets in, that Netflix show that you're watching late at night, that book that you're reading, that email that you're answering is disrupting your sleep. So where do you get yours? Head over to rawoptics.com, plug in the code BOOMER, you'll get 15% off your order. Enjoy. So one of the words you have said a few times now, which I've kind of tabled to this moment, is purpose.
Yeah.
Purpose gets used quite a bit. Do you mind just talking about how important is purpose, is particularly at an individual level for an organization? And I guess defining and finding that purpose, is there any sort of tools or techniques that you recommend?
Yeah. Usually when you have a new CEO or strategy process, you start to talk about the mission and the vision and the purpose. And many companies have actually skipped the mission, and they talk about purpose all the time. So this kind of definitions, or what are the definitions, that you can look at it in different ways. So what I say, well, who's the vision for actually? And if you look at corporations and it's kind of this quarterly reporting, the vision is well, someday we will be this. That's like the vision. And who is interested in that actually? Well, mostly the investors. Should I invest this money? Yeah, well, you're going there and you have maybe a financial outlook for 5 years or 3 years or the next quarter. So this is the vision in well. But then you have this kind of mission. What do we do every day? And if it's written in a good way, that well, we are here to make shoes for all the people. Well, that could be something. But and then this kind of purpose is the promise that if we do this, we will help the world becoming in a better place. So this is the understanding, the link between what you do, why your work matters. So that's the way. So that's like the shortest definition I have here. So and then we have Peter Drucker again, as you mentioned, and say, well, culture is strategy for breakfast. And what does that mean? And I've been discussing with a lot of CEOs, well, who owns the corporate culture? And then the CEOs who said that, well, I delegated to HR. And I said, I think
you mentioned this in a previous conversation, that delegating corporate culture to HR. But I want to, do you mind expanding a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'm head of HR, so I will be, in charge of the corporate culture. And I've said, well, I think you should leave the company because you're in trouble. Because the CEO plays a very vital part, of course, in being in the corporate culture, because he is the spokesperson, but or she, the CEO, and also, top management should talk about the purpose and the why. and this is this kind of Simon Sinek also thinking about, well, what are we here for? What are we doing? What are we aiming to do? And why is that important? And if you really can think about that, why is it important for our customers? How can we help them be better? Or why, I mean, if you meet a nice girl in the bar, if you only talk about yourself and how good you are, you probably won't go on the next date. So that won't be that exciting. So it's the same time. And then if you talk about this kind of middle management layer, if the things that do the work actually and are daily in this kind of approaches, so they are actually defining the how. So how are we going to work differently to achieve the precisions that we have? And it could be that, well, we do lean or we do something else, but we do this kind of interesting projects to build a new computer or whatever, which is actually building the corporate culture. We are defining the way we work. And then there are values that are commonly agreed upon, that how we work together as well. And then if we go one layer down, and now is really, well, what is the outcome of the work, and what can we do of that? So this kind of why, how, and what do we really do? So that function, I think the purpose functions as a glue between all the organizational layers or in really the ecosystem, and making this kind of cultural amoeba to something that are very tangible. So if you want to change the culture, change the way you work, and define how you're going to do it. Because many companies that actually we said that you should know your strategy or mission or vision, but really the values are in many companies something that's only on the website. So really thinking about these values and what does it mean, and that's the common rules of engagement. And in the military, there are pretty detailed descriptions of that. And then we come to something that we call leadership principles. Mm-hmm. So if you work with values and leadership principles are, again, the way and what are we preferring and choosing so that we can come to the vision that we want to strive for. So this is kind of my take on this kind of all the academic discussion with mission and visions from Porter, competitive, everything from the 80s and stuff like this. And then we also talking about the strategies and merging process. So we don't do 3 or 5 years. We do long term, but this is kind of something engaging in the organization, which means that the input or the information comes from everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you should be quite agile in getting that information.
In terms of an organization and just looking at an organization, and now we have this rapidly innovative, disruptive, whatever you want to call it, society, making sure your people are aligned with the purpose seems to be categorically one of the most important things that organizations can do. How do you, what are some steps that people can take? Let's say you're an executive listening to this and you're saying, this all makes sense. It can lead to organizational performance. Yeah. What are kind of the first steps that people can take?
Well, when we talk about this is that it has to be something that it's really like this kind of aha moment that's whoa, that's really important. So so if you don't get that reaction, you probably should,
don't force it. Right?
Yeah. And think about what actually you're doing. It might be that you're not doing anything important, so you don't have an important. But I'm talking about advanced working environments or creating environments. And then I would say it should be so short that you can write it on a T-shirt, because it has to be engaging in a way that you remember it. So these kinds and the most difficult thing to do is making it really short and impactful. So this is something that I think that going back also to the discussions where we have today a lot of this kind of sustainability, which is what we're most linked to purpose at the moment. And we talk a lot about financial sustainability, and we talk about this kind of environmental sustainability. And now companies are going back to this social sustainability. And this was something like I think the first Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland said in the United Nations back in 1987 that well, we got this kind of three things. And if we think about this like 30 years later, we are still in the pose of, okay, we're trying to optimize the financial performance. And yeah, we're getting good at the environment, but there's not more, has never been more plastic in the seas. And we're talking about this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of social stuff, it's been, if we look at, I'm not going political, but really how the world has developed, and we're looking at this kind of shutting the borders and doing everything. This kind
polarization, if you will.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, about polarization and closing and nationalism that are very thriving now. So and it can be a small community thing, but really, I think if you want to have your position in the world, it's really something helping out the society to become a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the future of work, because this is one of my favorite topics. And given some of the things that you said, I imagine it is as well. But what's your opinion on what the future of work looks like? I mean, that's actually a very, very broad question. And so we can either start with just sort of office space, how individuals show up to work, those kind of things. But in terms of the future of work, to me, it seems like there's obvious things like workday structure that could be improved. But what are some of your views on necessary changes that are needed to be made to the workplace environment today in order to really build sustainable high performance?
Well, Boomer, I think that you're more an expert in this area that I am with all the work that you do and understanding, going back to the genes and stuff like this. That I think that really this understanding is very important. We in many employee surveys, there's one of this question about work-life balance, and it's a difficult question. I don't know how many people lie in that question, but if you would prefer to sit on a porch drinking gin and tonic or champagne, or sitting at work, what would you prefer? I don't know. I probably would prefer work and doing some kind of good with the stuff I do, something useful that people can have something. But many would choose the other option as well. So this kind of hard. But I think this kind of the really, really important thing is that when you do something, you're motivated to do that, because that's not then stressful, and we're coming back to the purpose. But it means in this kind of triad of, are you happy with your work? That's one thing. Are you happy with your family and your friends, your social life? That's another thing. And then, are you happy with yourself, this kind of me? Are you feeling good? And if one of these areas is not good, then it will affect the other areas as well. So this kind of balance. And I think that we should more and more take responsibility of that in the workplace also, to ensure that we are good. This kind of office space, as we see, and it's not that important anymore, but the importance is the interactions. And now we have digital devices. Of course, a three-dimensional meeting face-to-face, there's some value in that. There's some personality. Otherwise, than as we now are doing this kind of with through the computer. So there's something human in that. And I've seen this also in the executive education, that a few years ago you wanted to do this kind of digital stuff, and you can and there's a lot of digital stuff going on, and you can do self learning and that. But now more they say, well, yeah, but everyone can do that on their own time if you're interested in that, because you can either way, all the information is there, it's accessible. But what you really get is the interaction from the face to face. So I see that the work environment and this kind of work happens in meetings or in interactions between people. That's going to be really, really stronger. And as you've been visiting a lot of innovation plants and stuff like that, they make the the work environment help you to this kind of do better interactions. It could be that you have the screens on the walls, or it could be you have slides or something else, which gives you in a different moods to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one that you've seen so far in terms of, as you've gone around to different companies, just ways that they've kind of constructed their office environments, so to speak, to feed performance? I think the famous ones that come to mind are like Google, of course, but any favorites that you've seen?
If we look at how companies going around in Europe and in the US, they're quite dull. The offices are quite dull.
Oh, it's horrible.
They're blue and gray, and it's corridors, and the rooms are. And I wouldn't really buy any of those furnitures to my house.
No.
And so this kind of there's a lot of potential to invest some money in making, as you would, the Starbucks made it as a second living room. I don't know if that's either what it is today, but really making the spaces alive. So there's been very innovative. I've been into some ad agencies are good. Microsoft was very, very good. I've been there as well. And then the Fjord offices, I love those. They're very nice. And those are like high class and very, very good. And there's, gadgets around them. It's like made out like a garage, some rooms, and you can really experiment and do stuff like that. So that's very inspiring. But the key point is that there are different environments, that there are different specialists going around doing it. It's like going at the fair, there's interesting things that inspire you in different ways. So that's the ones. So no, I really haven't been seeing those kind of innovations place still. If I visit 50 companies, there's like 3 that are like, whoa, that's a nice office. I would like to work here.
Yeah.
And of course, they're a nice office with, marble tables and stuff like that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm really talking about, well, this would be an inspirational place.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot going on in your homeland, actually, just in terms of companies looking to change that. Nava and a few others are doing a lot of good in terms of making the office atmosphere a lot more conducive to performance. Whereas in the past, we were kind of forced into this cubicle, or in my case, a trading floor. And I'm not sure that's the recipe for the future.
No. I once did this is off topic, but I once did a blog where I asked who invented the cubicle, and this I really
sounds like a great blog.
But I wanted to understand the motivation for that, but it's a really cost efficient way to fill a house with, or a room with.
Maybe you just got out of solitary confinement.
It could be. So would you invest in a cubicle in the future? I don't know.
I don't think so.
But one story of that is really because I was working really early in this open office environment. And then I came to companies that didn't have this open office. And we're actually at the university here, we're talking about that. The professor wants to have their own rooms, because that's like, a professor is a professor. And they're really trying to get this kind of open environment. And when I did this in a couple of workplaces there, and I asked, well, how high would you like to have the shades, between the desks? And they wanted like 180 centimeters. So if you stood up, you couldn't see your colleague.
Yeah.
and then I had this kind of rip out the wall stuff, and people were really like afraid. And then well, what are you doing behind your shade? That if
it's a good question,
here,
right?
Yeah, and if you're not here to like collaborate and talk to each other, and now when you see in the offices, and I don't know what that is, people have their air forums and stuff like this that they want to work in and have their own privacy. So I think that there needs to be this kind of focus on quiet rooms where you can come into flow and not be disturbed, and you have this phone. So it depends on what you want to do. So that's important to all you office designers out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about leadership, because I think we've talked a little bit about the future today. We've talked quite a bit about leadership, but When I was sitting for a promotion discussion around in investment banking, there was this phrase that what gets you here will not get you there.
Yeah,
And that gets used quite a bit in terms of just when we look at leadership. What gets us here today will not get us there tomorrow.
yeah,
What does leadership 2.0 or what does leadership development 2.0 look like? Because you're
yeah,
very much front and center in the leadership
yeah,
development world right now. What does it look like in the coming years?
yeah. I would like to argue still, I mean, this is a saying, but would you agree that uh, usually if you're a good sales guy, you will get promoted as head of sales?
Very,
And
very
then
true.
you're,
Right.
and then you're a shitty leader because
Yeah.
you love to do sales and not the people. So this is one of the the problems I think we have in this kind of old way of thinking about this
Hmm.
this way. One of the key issues which I ask myself is, well, how much are you doing leadership of your time, your total time? How much is leadership
Hmm.
versus how much is you do the work yourself?
Yeah.
So of course you can meet customers and you have this kind of, so what is, a good distribution of this kind of your time for leading others, helping others to achieve their targets versus that you're doing it yourself. And it could be, well, I have to do a proposal for a customer and I'll have the team, oh no, but I know myself better, so I'll do it. I won't send it out. In the case of sending it out and putting some kind of note on it and say, well, I think you should think about this, and then helping them to achieve the results, which means that you kind of uh, won't need to do it the next time. So it's
Hmm.
always easy to delegate upwards
Hmm.
because that's where the information is. So one of the interesting question is if someone asks me uh, how would you do this, then I ask, if I weren't here, who would you ask? And that gives
Uh,
them time to think about this stuff. So it's crucial to build this kind of comfort and safety that allows leadership. Because in many companies, when people are afraid, I've done the work before, now I'm delegating it to someone, that this person who will do it will get all the credit. And then I won't, I won't get the next role, but the person who's doing the actual, work. And that's one of these kind of personal things that leaders are thinking about. Well, if then I'm not working, I'm not contributing. No, your work is to enable that the work gets done and people will love you. And this is really a true fact. The less you care, really, like this, the less you let them work for themselves, the better they see you as a leader, because you're leading people, you're not leading the results. So making them achieve it. So this is really the trend where we should go. And this kind of, in this disruptive world, we are seeing smaller companies where there are smaller specialists and you have ideas, and there are a lot of things happening here. And then there are these kind of people that are seen as gods and have done it, and they're very, very, very appreciated and this kind of, but so everyone wants their advice, but you can become that person at your workplace actually. On that's what if you want to be a good leader, that's what you should focus on. That it's saying, well, ultimately, the work I should do is zero, that the work I should do is 100% helping people lead.
hmm.
Studies show if you want to do change and help people work in a different way, it's about 30% you do the work yourself, 70% you should help others. In most of the organizations where we start, it's like I do 70% myself and 30% of the time is like leadership. So if you have a team, how much time a week do you spend with your team to help them, or one-to-ones? Well, it's like how good do you know that your people perform? Do you ask them every week, or do you ask them in personal development discussion once a year or twice a year? And this is kind of the thing. So how can you make this kind of personal development discussions ongoing all the time so that they appreciate it? So that's my note in this kind of think about yourself. How much time do you really put on leadership? And you know what leadership is. You don't have to describe that. Like
Mm-hmm.
managing is budgets and seeing that work and the KPIs, and then but leadership is helping people to do the work, getting better at what they do, and also expanding
Mm-hmm.
new areas.
I love that. The 30-70 rule.
Yeah.
You're taking the Pareto principle and expanding it a little bit. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Marc, this has been absolutely brilliant, and I've loved every aspect of this conversation. Just want to transition now into the final 4 questions, which we ask everybody that come on the show. First question is what is one area do you think, or that you think, people should pay more attention to when looking to improve their own individual performance?
One thing is time management and prioritization of what you want to do, and the aspect that we talked about, the percentage of you put in leadership and you put in management. So this kind of things of reflection. So how much time do you think about it? Because change starts from you and how you perceive things, and how open are you for new ideas, and this kind of I'm right to maybe that person has something to contribute, and what if this would be, then you don't have like 2 opposites, that you always have a third option that you can think about, and that's, people think you're quite smart if you do that. So that's one for me.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Time management. How do you recommend people start? I guess a basic one, tracking their time. Do you just print out a spreadsheet with 168 hours on it and start writing out what you're doing? Or because this is something that, Peter Drucker, who I keep alluding to because I love his work. He talks about all the time. What's the easiest way to start doing that?
The easiest way to start doing it is to feel that, are you stressed or are you not stressed?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to ask yourself, well, what are the important things that I need to do during this week? And then you take it down to this day, and you shouldn't have more than 3. And then you know that there's always stuff that happens during the day, these ad hoc things that come up. So make sure that your time is like 60% utilized to the days hours you have, because then you always get more that you have to do. Then this kind of, I don't know how much we have been talking about this, but someone said to me is that when we're married to our computers or our phones, and we have constant email, and email is like, instant messaging from 911. I mean, you have to answer it right away. So why don't you have a day off email, not a day off, but answer it in the morning and in the afternoon. So do that for 1 week. And if it feels good for you, I promise that will make your days quite much more easier, because then you can focus on the chunks and what you can do. And of course, if you have spare time, go back and do whatever you want. And then also this kind of Warren Buffett, how much time does he spend on educating himself a week? Someone said 90%.
It's like 8 hours a day he spends reading or something.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Charlie Munger once said, he gets paid a lot to read, which is, I love Charlie Munger on so many different levels, but that's great.
Yeah.
Marc, what's your top trick for enhancing focus?
My top trick for enhancing focus is going outside and have a walk.
How long do you typically walk for?
20 minutes.
Beautiful. Coffee, coffee in Finland, you got a lot of great options there, right?
But I didn't drink like 12 cups of coffee. So that's why we are so prominent here in Finland, is because we drink 12 cups of coffee a day, and that's big coffees. And we do it as like a filter coffee home and in the office. So we don't have that kind of, but we're really addicted to that stuff. So but probably coffee and walks. But the trick is also to let stuff rest a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're ready with something, it probably you could spend 5 minutes more on it, but don't do it now. Just leave it for 20 minutes and then go back to it and then finalize it, because there's always something that comes to mind afterwards, or if you can do it next day. And this is I think also very important in when doing like this kind of deadlining and timing. Just be ready a little bit before the deadline if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put this extra effort, and that's like this kind of the 10x stuff that makes it really fly.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What book has significantly impacted your life and the way you show up to perform in it?
Well, this is a difficult question, and there are many of these kind of leadership books. And I mentioned this kind of Guy Reynolds book before.
Mm-hmm.
I think this kind of Dan Pink's book of motivation is also good. I really enjoyed that, and this was the first time when it came out. I really came into touch with this kind of sticks and carrots don't drive performance, but really you feel joy of doing work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been kind of this one of the leading stars for me, that how can we make this work joyful? And then we come back where we are discussed like a team in this kind of discussion is really the purpose. So how can I make that? So that's a recommended read. I think it came out 10 years ago, but it's probably cited a lot. Yeah.
Beautiful. Marc, where can people learn more about you?
They're very, very, very welcome to visit our website, hankensse.fi, and see what are the exciting stuff that we do. Or, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, but just don't connect, write something that I can react to, and I love to have a discussion, and then we can get in contact. So I'm here. Yeah, my contacts are on the net, so just put me an email or how you feel. I'm there.
Marc, there's been so many great audio gems here, from be more on the edge, or I guess to be modern, be on the edge, to the 30-70 rule. But thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing all of your knowledge. This has been absolutely incredible.
Thank you, Boomer. It's an absolute delight for me as well.
Superhumans, before you go, if you enjoy the episode, if you enjoy all of our episodes, head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. It would really, really help get the word out on what we're doing here at Decoding Superhuman. Feedback. If you want to give us direct feedback, or you want to see us cover a specific topic, whether on the shorter episodes or the longer episodes, head on over to your email and email us at podcast@decodingsuperhuman.com. For those of you who have sent emails to that address, you know that I respond to every single one. And then lastly, would you like 300 to 500 words of highly curated information on how to upgrade performance? If so, head on over to decodingsuperhuman.com/throwdown, and you'll get our next issue of the Throwdown, which is our 300 to 500 word highly curated digest, if you will, on what's going on in the field of performance. Enjoy your day, Superhumans, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to today's episode.